standard tea tasting equipment. So this is, 150 ml infuser, our tea tasting cups, and our lids. And this is the way that tea is tasted professionally right through the world. So the tea factories will use this, the brokers in Colombo will use this, and buyers all around the world will use the same system. It allows us to grade and critique tea in the same manner, so that no one's using a different type of vessel. What I've got here is some new digital scales, and over here we've got some very antique looking scales, and both of them do exactly the same thing. We want to use 2 grams of tea into your infuser. This is something that was used from yesteryear, something that a lot of tea companies will still use. We've got a pair of golden scales in our company, but the digital scale just makes things that little bit easier, that little bit quicker for us to measure out our tea. And this is helpful, especially when you are brewing many cups of tea. And if you walk into a Colombo Brokers or into a professional tea room, you might well have up to 50 sets right down the line brewed up at any one time. And especially if you're at a Brokers and they're doing high grown tastings, you will find a lot of tea being brewed up in one go. So that's my 2 grams of Norelia tea. And if I just bring that over to the camera, you can see that's a Pecco grade of tea. It's very greenish in color, and you'll see that when it comes out in the cup, it'll be very yellow. And that's what we'll be doing here all the way through. And what you'll find is that, because all the leaves are different, this particular one from High Forest Estate is very large. And if I pull it out, I might even need to just do 1 gram. Oh, no, that's 2 grams there. It's more than 2 grams. But the leaf here is much, much larger. So there's a variety of leaf styles that are made right across Sri Lanka. 2 grams on the dot. So that'll go in there. Now coming down in leaf style, and it'll be very different when I pull this one out. This is a broken orange Pecco grade of tea, so very typical of teas that are made in the Uva region. This tea is about 2-3 years old. It's a seasonal Uva tea, and the smell is still there. It's a very aromatic tea. And what do I mean by a seasonal Uva tea? Well, these teas are made during a peak window period, and that window period usually kicks in August, in July, and will peak really in August. And what happens is that you get dry weather, a dry spell of weather that kicks in July, and with that you'll have a wind that blows in from the northeast of the country, and it'll blow in and it'll hit, especially in this area of the Malvatta Valley and Uva, it'll hit those estates of the Malvatta Valley, and it will send the bushes into a real state of survival, and because of a lack of water and the high wind. And with that, it'll start to produce very flavory, very aromatic teas. So this tea, although it's still quite old, it's been kept in a foil pouch, it has this wonderful aroma to it still. And a lot of tea companies will buy these teas simply to add flavoring to their blends. So I've got my Matakale Golden Curl. This is an award-winning tea, and this tea beat, I think, close to 200 other teas that were entered in at last year's Leafies at Fortnum and Mason, and this won for the black tea category. And this is a very different tea. This is a tea not typical of the mulla teas that are grown on the west of the country. It's grown from a Japanese tea bush and cultivar, so it's very different, and it has almost a Japanese flavor coming through in the taste, but with the fact that it's grown in a Sri Lankan environment, that soil conditions, the weather patterns of the western slopes are affected in this tea as well. So it's very different. Here we've got a tea from Kandy region. Now these are very medium-bodied teas, so they're not really thick in color, but they make for a very nice all-day drinking type of tea. And the smell coming off this Craighead is very malty, actually. Nice malt flavor coming through. And again, a different leaf style. This is known as FBOP. So that's flowery broken orange Pecco. just going to take out a little bit of tea from that. Now, onto one of my favorites, actually, which is Nubithanakanda. This is a tea estate that grows next to a virgin rainforest in Sabaragamuwa province. And here with this leaf, if I show it to you, you'll see that there are these silvery tips littered through the leaf. Now, when we're making good tea, we want to pick the top two leaf in a bud, and those silvery tips that you see in that are the buds that haven't been destroyed during the manufacture process. You can notice that the leaf is very black. Teas that grow in the south of the country tend to have a very black sheen to them, and that's partly due to the fact that you get a lot of sunlight, and also the soil conditions will affect that. This is one of my favorite teas. There's a natural caramel flavor that comes through in this tea, and it's a very good representation of Sabaragamuwa. And finally, we're down to the region of Ruhuna. Ruhuna teas are low-grown teas, and today, although they were one of the last regions to be planted with, Ruhuna today represents 55% of Sri Lanka's tea production, so a very important region. What's interesting about it is, unlike the high-grown regions that were established during the colonial era, these are all run by smallholder farmers. So they're small individual farmers who have, a quarter of an acre, half an acre, maybe even something smaller than that, who have a few tea bushes, and they will grow their tea and they will provide it to a particular tea factory. And this particular tea is an orange pekoe, so something that Sri Lanka or Ceylon tea is famous for. And this is what we mean by orange pekoe, this wiry tea. And this is what Berabula makes. It has a little bit more strength than what you'd find from a high-grown orange pekoe. A little bit more strength because of the lower elevation. But this, again, has a very big, malty caramel note to it. So I'll put that there. And that is our tea weighing done, and we'll be ready to now pour and brew.